She had everything money could buy, except the one thing she saw in his eyes across that restaurant. The kind of love that doesn't cost a dime. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let us begin. The skyline of San Francisco stretched below Victoria Chen's penthouse like a kingdom she'd conquered but never truly wanted. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering city, but inside, the air felt sterile, all white marble, chrome fixtures, and silence. She stood at those windows every evening, a glass of wine in her hand that she rarely drank, watching the world move while she stayed frozen. "Mommy?" Victoria didn't turn immediately. She heard the small voice, recognized the hope in it, but something in her had calcified over the past 3 years. Something that made even her daughter's voice feel distant. "Mommy, can we have dinner together tonight, like, at a table?" Emma was 8 now, dark-haired and delicate, with her father's gentle eyes. She stood in the doorway of the living room, wearing her school uniform, backpack still on, waiting for a mother who'd become more ghost than guardian. Victoria finally turned. "We eat together every night, sweetheart." "No." Emma's voice was small but firm. "You eat in your office, I eat with Rosa." The truth landed like a slap. Rosa, the nanny. The woman who'd raised Emma more than Victoria had these past years. Victoria opened her mouth to defend herself, then closed it. What defense was there? "You're right," Victoria said quietly. She set down her wine glass, untouched as always. "Get changed. We'll go somewhere special." Emma's face lit up like sunrise, and Victoria felt something crack in her chest. Not quite pain, not quite hope, just the beginning of something. Across the city, in a neighborhood where hope came in smaller packages, Daniel Ross sat at his kitchen table counting bills. 20s, 10s, 5s. The stack never seemed to grow, no matter how he arranged it. "Dad, you okay?" Leo stood in the doorway of their cramped 2-bedroom apartment, skinny and 7, with a gap-toothed smile that Daniel would die to protect. The boy wore dinosaur pajamas that were getting too small, but Daniel hadn't had the heart or the funds to replace them yet. "Yeah, buddy. Just planning something special for your birthday tomorrow." "You don't have to," Leo said. "Too mature for 7. We can just have mac and cheese. The good kind, with the powder." Daniel's throat tightened. His son had learned not to want things. Learned it from watching his mother leave, from seeing his father work doubles, from understanding in that wordless way children do, that money was love's gatekeeper, and they were locked outside. "No," Daniel said, standing up. "Tomorrow's your birthday. We're going somewhere nice. A real restaurant." "Like with menus?" Leo's eyes widened. "With menus, and candles on the table, and you can order whatever you want." Daniel looked at the cash again. $243. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but he'd counted Leo's smiles over the past year, and they'd been too few. His son deserved one night where the world felt abundant instead of scarce. Sometimes love means spending money you don't have, Daniel thought, and just praying tomorrow takes care of itself. He pulled Leo into a hug, fierce and tight, breathing in the scent of cheap shampoo and childhood. Outside their window, San Francisco sparkled with possibilities that always seemed just out of reach. But tonight, tomorrow, actually they'd sit at a table with real napkins and pretend, just for an hour, that they belonged in that sparkling world too. Victoria chose Atelier Rousseau because it was quiet, elegant, and far enough from her usual circles that no one would bother her with business talk or condolences about David. The restaurant sat in Pacific Heights, all exposed brick and soft amber lighting, with tables spaced far enough apart that conversations remained private. "Table for 2, Victoria told the host, her hand resting on Emma's shoulder. The girl practically vibrated with excitement, taking in the white tablecloths and the gentle clink of crystal. The same evening, Daniel pulled up to the same restaurant in his 12-year-old Honda, second-guessing everything. The valet looked at his car like it was a fossil. Daniel tipped him $5 he couldn't afford to lose, and walked inside holding Leo's hand like a lifeline. "Reservation for Ross," he said, voice steadier than he felt. The host led them to a table near the window, not the best spot, but not the worst either. That middle ground where Daniel always found himself. Not quite failing. Not quite succeeding. Just surviving. He sat down across from Leo, who stared wide-eyed at the leather-bound menu. Dad, these don't have prices. That's how you know it's fancy, Daniel said, smiling despite the knot in his stomach. 3 tables away, Victoria and Emma settled in. Emma chattered about school, about her friend Sophia, about the cat she wanted to adopt. Victoria listened, really listened, and realized how much she'd missed, how many dinners she'd traded for conference calls, how many bedtimes she'd skipped for board meetings. Mom, Emma whispered, leaning forward. That little boy over there, he looks lonely. Victoria's gaze followed Emma's pointing finger and landed on Leo, who was smiling at something his father said, and then her eyes shifted, and everything stopped. The man across from the boy wasn't lonely, he was luminous. Not in the way wealth makes people shine, but in the way love does. He was looking at his son like the child was the only thing in the world worth seeing, his whole face soft with a tenderness so raw it hurt to witness. Victoria forgot to breathe. She watched him laugh at something the boy said, watched him reach across to ruffle the kid's hair, watched him look at the menu with barely concealed worry before his smile returned, easy and unbothered, like he wasn't counting every dollar. And in that moment, Victoria Chen, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt alive. Have you ever seen someone and just known they were going to change your life? Drop a comment below about a moment when a stranger caught your attention in a way you couldn't explain. Let's talk about those split-second connections that stop time. The waiter came to Daniel's table first, a young man with slicked-back hair and the kind of polite smile that barely concealed judgment. Daniel had seen that look before in bank lobbies, at parent-teacher conferences, anywhere his worn jacket and calloused hands marked him as other. "Have we decided?" the waiter asked. Leo looked up at his father with those trusting eyes, and Daniel's heart clenched. "Can I get the steak?" It was probably the most expensive thing on the menu. Daniel knew it without looking. "You can get anything you want, buddy. It's your birthday." Daniel's voice didn't waver. He'd make it work. He always did. "I'll have the steak too," Daniel told the waiter. "Medium rare for me." Well done for him. "Excellent choice. And to drink? Water's fine. For both of us." The waiter's smile thinned just slightly before he glided away. Daniel pretended not to notice. He'd gotten good at pretending. "Dad?" Leo's voice was small. "Is this too much money?" "No," Daniel said firmly, reaching across to squeeze his son's hand. "Tonight's about you, not money. You're 7 years old once, just once, and I want you to remember being happy." Leo's smile returned, wide and gap-toothed and perfect. Victoria couldn't stop watching them. Emma was talking about something, art class, maybe? But Victoria's attention kept drifting to the table by the window, to the way the man listened to his son with his whole body leaning in, to the way he touched the boy's hand with such casual affection, like connection was as natural as breathing. When did I stop touching Emma like that? Victoria thought. When did I start rationing love like it was something that could run out? "Mom?" Emma's voice cut through. "You're not listening." "I'm sorry, baby. I'm here. Tell me again." But then it happened. Leo reached for his water glass excited, animated, talking with his hands the way children do, and knocked it over. Water cascaded across the white tablecloth, dripping onto his lap. The boy froze, his face collapsing into mortification. Victoria tensed, waiting for the reprimand, for the embarrassed anger, for the scene. It never came. Daniel laughed. Not a mean laugh, not a frustrated one. A genuine, warm, "It's okay, we're okay" laugh that seemed to wrap around his son like a blanket. "Well," Daniel said, grabbing his napkin and dabbing at Leo's shirt, "guess the water wanted to join the birthday party too." Leo giggled, relief flooding his small face. "I'm sorry, Dad." "For what? Being 7? Daniel shook his head, still smiling. "Come on, let's fix this." He flagged down a waiter, not with irritation, but with easy grace, and within moments, the table was reset. Leo was dry. The moment had passed without shame, without anger, without any of the sharp edges Victoria had come to associate with mistakes. She sat there, her expensive wine glass halfway to her lips, completely undone. That was love. Real. Uncomplicated. Freely given love. The kind that didn't keep score or demand perfection. The kind that laughed at spilled water and saw birthdays as sacred. The kind she'd forgotten existed. "Mom?" Emma's voice was closer now. Can I go say happy birthday to him? Victoria blinked. What? The boy. It's his birthday. Can I tell him happy birthday? Every instinct Victoria had developed over 3 years of careful isolation screamed, no. Don't engage. Don't open yourself to strangers. Don't risk feeling anything that might hurt. But she looked at Emma's hopeful face, then at the man and his son, laughing together over something small and beautiful. And she did something unbelievable. Yes, Victoria said. But, I'll come with you. Emma's eyes went wide with surprise and delight. Victoria stood, her legs unsteady, her heart hammering. She smoothed her Armani blouse, black silk, understated but unmistakably expensive, and took Emma's hand. What are you doing? A voice in her head demanded. Sit down. Mind your own business. Don't be ridiculous. But her feet kept moving. She approached their table, Emma a step ahead, practically bouncing. Excuse me, Victoria said, and her voice came out softer than she'd intended. Not the boardroom voice, not the Ice Queen voice, just her voice. Daniel looked up, and their eyes met for the first time. Something electric passed between them, not attraction exactly, though that was there too. It was recognition. The kind that happens when one lonely person sees another and realizes they're not as alone as they thought. Hi, Emma said brightly. My mom and I are sitting over there, and I heard it's your birthday. She looked at Leo with genuine joy. Happy birthday. Leo's face lit up. Thank you. Daniel started to stand, caught off guard, clearly trying to read the situation. Rich woman. Expensive clothes. His table. Oh God, is this pity? I'm Victoria, she said quickly, extending her hand. And this is Emma. We didn't mean to intrude, but my daughter has a soft spot for birthdays, and I. She paused. Why had she come over? What was she doing? I wanted to tell you that you're a wonderful father. Victoria finished, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. The way you handled the water, that's, her voice caught. That's how love is supposed to look. Daniel stared at her, completely blindsided. His cheeks flushed. Thank you. I'm not. And I'd like to take care of your meal tonight, Victoria said. For his birthday, if that's okay. The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Daniel's expression shifted from surprise to something harder, colder. His jaw tightened, and he stood fully now, putting himself between Victoria and Leo in a movement so subtle and so protective it made her chest ache. That's very generous, Daniel said, his voice carefully controlled, but we're fine, thank you. Please, I didn't mean. I can pay for my son's birthday dinner. Each word was clipped, precise, pride bleeding through every syllable. We don't need charity. The word, charity, landed like a slap. Victoria felt her face flush. That's not what I meant. I wasn't. It's what it looked like. Daniel's eyes, dark brown, wounded, held hers. Rich lady feels bad for the struggling dad and decides to play savior for the night. I get it. But no thank you. Emma tugged on Victoria's hand, sensing the tension, wanting to leave. Leo looked between the adults, confused and a little scared. Victoria swallowed hard, mortification and something else, something that felt like grief washing over her. I'm sorry. I really am. You looked happy, and I haven't seen that in a long time. I wanted to be part of it, even for a second. That's all. Her honesty seemed to crack something in Daniel's armor. He blinked, his stance softening just slightly. We're good, he said, but gentler this time. But thank you, really. Victoria nodded, feeling foolish and exposed. She turned to leave, Emma already pulling her away. But then Leo's voice piped up, small and earnest. Thank you for the happy birthday wish, Emma. Emma waved back, smiling despite the awkwardness. Victoria returned to her table, her hands trembling as she picked up her wineglass. She drained it in one long swallow, the first alcohol she'd actually consumed in months. Across the restaurant, Daniel sat back down, his heart pounding, his mind racing. What the hell just happened? He looked at Leo, who was already distracted by the breadbasket again, and tried to calm the storm in his chest. He'd been rude. He knew it. But the alternative, accepting handouts from strangers, from rich strangers, felt like giving up the last piece of dignity he had left. Still, her words echoed, "You're a wonderful father." No one had said that to him in years, not since Melissa left. Not since he'd become the guy who couldn't provide, couldn't keep his family together, couldn't be enough. He glanced toward Victoria's table, She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was focused on her daughter. But her shoulders were tense, her smile forced. She looked lonely, Daniel realized. Even lonelier than me. The meals arrived. Daniel's steak was perfect. Leo's was slightly overdone, just the way he'd asked. They ate slowly, savoring every bite, making it last. Daniel tried to enjoy it. He really did. But his mind kept drifting to the woman 3 tables away, who'd looked at him like he was doing something miraculous just by loving his kid. And Victoria tried to engage with Emma, tried to be present. But her mind kept drifting to the man by the window who'd refused her money but accepted her words like they were worth more than gold. Neither of them ate much. Both of them felt the air in the restaurant shift charged now, heavy with something unnamed and impossible to ignore. The check came. Daniel paid with cash, counting out bills carefully, leaving a tip that was too generous for his budget but felt necessary for his soul. As they stood to leave, he caught Victoria's eye one more time. She looked away first, but not before he saw it, the shimmer of unshed tears, the naked vulnerability of someone who tried to reach out and been rejected. "You're an idiot," Daniel told himself. She was just trying to be kind. But pride is a hell of a prison, and he'd been locked inside it too long to find the key now. The night air hit Daniel like a rebuke as he and Leo stepped out of Atelier Rousseau. It had started to drizzle light, misty rain that clung to their skin and made the streetlights blur into halos. "That was the best dinner ever," Leo said, skipping ahead on the sidewalk despite the rain. Daniel forced a smile. "Yeah, buddy, happy birthday." But the taste of the meal had turned bitter in his mouth, not because of the food, the steak had been perfect, melted on his tongue like butter, but because he kept replaying that moment. The woman's face when he'd said the word charity, the way her expression had crumpled, just for a second, before she'd rebuilt her walls. "You didn't have to be cruel," his conscience whispered. She was trying to connect, not condescend. "Dad, you're walking too fast." Daniel stopped, realizing he'd been powering forward like he was trying to outrun his own shame. He waited for Leo to catch up, then took his son's hand. "Sorry. Just thinking. About the pretty lady?" Daniel's head snapped toward Leo. "What?" "The one who said happy birthday to me. She was nice. And pretty. You think so too, right?" Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel sighed. "Yeah, she was nice. I wasn't very nice back." "You could say sorry," Leo offered, with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Miss Patterson says sorry fixes most things." If only it were that easy, Daniel thought. They walked to the car in silence, and as Daniel buckled Leo into the back seat, his phone buzzed. A text from his foreman. "Need you on the site early tomorrow, 6 a.m. Daniel closed his eyes. 6 a.m. meant 4 hours of sleep if he was lucky. It meant another day of hammering nails into someone else's dream home, while his own life stayed under construction, never quite finished. He drove home through streets that sparkled with rain and wealth, neighborhoods he'd never live in, restaurants he'd never return to, a world that existed parallel to his, but never intersecting. Except tonight, it had intersected, and he'd slammed the door in its face. Victoria sat in the back of her town car, Emma asleep against her shoulder, as her driver navigated through the rain-slicked streets of Pacific Heights. She should have felt relief. The evening was over. The awkward encounter was behind her. She could return to her penthouse, pour another glass of wine she wouldn't drink, and pretend the whole thing never happened. But her chest ached. "I wasn't trying to pity him," she thought fiercely. "I was trying to—" What? What was I trying to do? Connect, that's what. For the first time in 3 years, she'd seen something that made her want to reach out instead of retreat. And she'd been shut down so completely, so publicly, it felt like a confirmation of everything she'd told herself since David died. You don't belong in the world of real feelings anymore. Stay in your tower, stay safe. "Miss Chen?" Her driver's voice was gentle. "We're here." Victoria looked up. The building loomed above them, 60 stories of glass and steel, her penthouse on top like a crown, or a cage, depending on how you looked at it. She carried Emma inside, up the private elevator, into the pristine apartment that always felt like a museum. She tucked her daughter into bed, Egyptian cotton sheets, a ceiling painted with stars, every comfort money could provide. Emma stirred as Victoria pulled the blanket up. "Mom?" "Sure, I'm here. Tonight was fun. Can we do it again?" "Of course, baby. And maybe, Maybe we could see that boy and his dad again? Leo. That was his name. Victoria's throat tightened. I don't think so, sweetheart. Why not? Because his father thinks I'm a rich woman slumming it for entertainment. Because I don't know how to be a person anymore, just a bank account with a pulse. Because we don't know them, Victoria said instead. Now sleep. She kissed Emma's forehead and retreated to her own bedroom, a space so large it echoed. She stood at the window overlooking the city, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Her phone sat on the marble countertop. She'd been holding it when they left the restaurant. Had actually considered. What? Asking the host for the man's name? His number? Like some kind of stalker? He made it clear, he wants nothing to do with you. And why would he? What could she possibly offer him besides money, which he'd already rejected? She was a billionaire who'd forgotten how to be human. He was a man who loved his son with the kind of unself-conscious devotion she'd only ever seen in movies. They had nothing in common. Except they both looked lonely. Victoria's phone buzzed an email from her CFO about the Tokyo merger. Work, numbers, the safe language she understood. She ignored it. Instead, she poured a glass of wine, then poured it down the sink. She didn't want to be numb tonight. The ache in her chest felt important, like her heart was remembering how to beat after years of just mechanically pumping blood. David, she thought, pressing her palm to the cold window, what would you tell me to do? But David was 3 years gone, and the only answer was the rain against glass and the empty apartment and the memory of a man's wounded pride. Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in his narrow bed, listening to Leo's soft snoring through the thin wall, replaying the evening on an endless loop. That's how love is supposed to look. Those words, the way she'd said them like she was starving and he'd accidentally shown her a feast. He'd thought at first she was mocking him. Rich people did that sometimes, slummed it in the real world for entertainment. He'd read articles about executives who spent a day being homeless for perspective, then went back to their penthouses feeling enlightened. But there'd been no mockery in her eyes, just hunger. Raw, aching hunger for something real. And you shut her down like she was trying to rob you. Daniel rolled over, punched his pillow, tried to find a comfortable position that didn't exist. The truth was, he'd panicked. Because accepting her offer would have meant admitting he couldn't afford his son's birthday dinner on his own. Would have meant confirming what his ex-wife had screamed at him before she left. You're not enough, Daniel. You'll never be enough. So he'd protected his pride, his fragile, stupid pride. And he'd hurt someone who was just trying to be kind. Dad? Daniel sat up. Leo stood in the doorway, clutching his dinosaur stuffed animal, silhouetted by the hallway light. Can't sleep? I had a bad dream. Daniel lifted his blanket. Come here, buddy. Leo climbed in, curling against his father's side, and Daniel wrapped his arm around his son's small shoulders. Want to talk about it? I dreamed Mom came back, Leo said quietly. But she said she couldn't stay because we're too poor. Daniel's heart shattered. Leo, are we poor, Dad? How do you answer that? Daniel wondered. How do you tell your 7-year-old that wealth isn't just about money, that having each other makes you rich in ways that matter more? But Leo had already learned that money equals love, because his mother had taught him that by leaving. We're not poor, Daniel said carefully. We have everything we need. We have each other, and that's worth more than all the money in the world. Then why did the lady want to pay for our dinner? Miss Patterson says people only give you things when you don't have enough. Damn it. Daniel closed his eyes. Sometimes people give because they want to connect, not because they think you need it. I think that lady was lonely. And she saw us being happy, and she wanted to be part of that happiness. Then why were you mad at her? Because I'm an idiot, Daniel said honestly. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes too. Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then, you should call her and say sorry. I don't have her number, buddy. Then we should go back to the restaurant and find her. Daniel almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he kissed the top of Leo's head. Maybe. Now sleep. But as Leo drifted off against his chest, Daniel stared at the ceiling and knew he wouldn't sleep either. Because somewhere in this city, a woman with sad eyes was probably staring at her own ceiling, thinking she'd done something wrong, when really, she'd done everything right, and he'd been too broken to see it. The next morning, Victoria sat in her office on the 42nd floor of Chen Technologies, staring at spreadsheets she couldn't focus on. Her assistant, Margaret, poked her head in. "Your 9 o'clock is here. Cancel it." Margaret's eyebrows rose. Victoria never canceled meetings. "Are you feeling okay?" "Fine. I just need some time to think." "About?" Victoria looked up. And Margaret, who'd been with her for 15 years, who'd held her hand at David's funeral, who knew her better than anyone, saw something in her boss's expression that made her step inside and close the door. "What happened?" Margaret asked gently. "I made a fool of myself last night." "You? Impossible." Victoria told her. All of it. The restaurant, the father and son, the rejected offer, the humiliation. Margaret listened, then said, "So you tried to do something kind, and a wounded man reacted from his wound. That doesn't make you a fool, Victoria. That makes you human. I shouldn't have approached them." "Why not?" "Because." Victoria gestured vaguely at her office, the skyline, the evidence of her success. "Because, look at this, look at what I am. I don't belong in that world anymore. Real people, with real problems. I'm just numbers and deals, and lonely," Margaret finished. "You're lonely. And you saw someone else who was lonely. And you tried to bridge that gap. There's nothing foolish about that." Victoria's eyes stung. "He looked at me like I was trying to buy his dignity. Maybe that's what he saw. Doesn't mean that's what you were offering." Margaret leaned against the desk. "David used to say you had the biggest heart of anyone he knew. You just learned to armor it after he died. Maybe this man saw a crack in that armor, and it scared him as much as it scared you. I'll never see him again anyway. It doesn't matter. Then why are you still thinking about him?" Victoria had no answer for that. Or maybe she did, but she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Daniel hammered another nail into the frame, sweat dripping down his face despite the morning chill. The construction site was loud drills, whining, saws, screaming, men shouting, but his mind was elsewhere. "Ross, you alive up there?" His foreman's voice cut through the noise. "Yeah, sorry." Daniel refocused, lined up another nail, drove it home. But an hour later, when they broke for lunch, he sat on a stack of lumber and pulled out his phone. He opened Google, typed, "Atelier Rousseau, San Francisco." The restaurant's website loaded. Elegant photos. A phone number. "What are you going to do? Call them? And ask for the contact info of a customer?" his rational brain demanded. "That's insane." But his thumb hovered over the call button anyway. "What you looking at?" Miguel, his work buddy, peered over his shoulder. "Fancy restaurant. Got a date?" "No, just." Daniel locked his phone. "Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing." Daniel sighed. "I met someone last night. I was rude to her. Now I can't stop thinking about it. So, apologize. I don't know how to find her." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "This, the 21st century or what? What's her name?" "Victoria. That's all I know." "Victoria at a French restaurant in Pacific Heights." Miguel whistled. "She's rich?" "Huh? Very. And you're a broke construction worker. Thanks for the reminder. I'm just saying, man, different worlds. Maybe let it go." But Daniel couldn't. Because he kept remembering the way she'd looked at him. Not with pity, not with judgment. With recognition. Like she saw him, really saw him. And he'd rejected that gift because he was too afraid to accept it. Victoria left the office early, something she never did. Margaret had actually gasped when Victoria announced she was taking Emma to the park. "The park?" Margaret repeated, like Victoria had said she was flying to Mars. "Yes, the park, where children play. I've heard of such places." Margaret smiled. "Good for you." So now Victoria sat on a bench in Golden Gate Park, watching Emma climb on the jungle gym with an enthusiasm that made Victoria's chest ache. How many afternoons had she missed? How many moments like this, sacrificed to conference calls and quarterly reports? "David wouldn't recognize me," she thought. "He'd be horrified at what I've become." The afternoon was cool, clouds gathering overhead with the promise of rain. Parents clustered in groups, talking and laughing while their kids played. Victoria sat alone, as always, an invisible wall separating her from their easy camaraderie. She was about to suggest leaving when Emma shrieked, not in pain, but in delight. "Mom, Mom, it's Leo." Victoria's head snapped up. Impossible. San Francisco had nearly 1 million people. The odds of... But there he was. Leo, in his too small dinosaur jacket, running toward Emma with that gap-toothed smile. And behind him, walking slowly, hands in his pockets, face registering the same shock Victoria felt, Daniel. Their eyes met across 50 feet of playground, and Victoria's heart did something complicated in her chest. He looked tired, more tired than he'd looked at the restaurant. His hair was dusty, his jeans worn, his flannel shirt marked with what looked like paint or plaster. He'd come straight from work, clearly. Victoria stood, smoothing her cashmere sweater, cream-colored, probably cost more than his monthly rent, and immediately felt self-conscious about it. "Run," part of her screamed. "This is your chance to avoid the awkwardness. Just take Emma and go." But Emma and Leo were already deep in conversation. The kind of instant friendship children form before adults teach them about boundaries and differences. Daniel approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Hi." "Hi," Victoria managed. Silence stretched between them, loaded with everything unsaid from the restaurant. "I didn't mean to intrude on your afternoon," Daniel said finally. "We can go." "No," the word came out too quickly. "I mean, the kids seem happy. We don't have to. It's fine." More silence. A crack of thunder made them both look up. The clouds had darkened considerably. That particular shade of gray that meant the sky was about to open up. "We should probably head out," Daniel said, just as the first fat drops began to fall. Within seconds, it went from sprinkle to downpour. "Emma," Victoria called, but the rain was already soaking through her sweater. Parents grabbed their children and scattered. The playground emptied, like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Emma and Leo came running, squealing and laughing, completely drenched. The pavilion, Daniel pointed to a covered picnic area about 100 feet away. "Come on." They ran together an absurd, laughing sprint through rain that fell so hard it bounced off the pavement. Victoria's Italian leather shoes were ruined within seconds. Her hair, professionally blown out that morning, plastered to her face. Emma and Leo thought it was the greatest adventure of their lives. They reached the pavilion, gasping and soaked. The roof provided shelter, but did nothing for the wind that drove rain sideways. They huddled together in the center, dripping puddles onto the concrete. "Well," Daniel said, water dripping from his nose, "this is dramatic." Victoria laughed. She couldn't help it. She was soaked to the bone, her $800 sweater probably ruined, her makeup definitely running, and she was laughing. Actually, laughing. When was the last time she'd laughed like this? "You guys look like drowned rats," Leo announced happily. "You're one to talk, buddy," Daniel said, wringing out the bottom of his son's jacket. Emma was shivering. Victoria immediately started to take off her sweater, wet as it was. It was still wool, but Daniel was faster. He shrugged out of his flannel shirt, revealing a gray t-shirt underneath, and wrapped it around Emma's shoulders. "Here. It's not much. But, thank you," Victoria said softly, stunned by the casual generosity. The shirt smelled like sawdust and something woodsy. It was worn soft from 100 washings. Emma pulled it tight around herself. "I got Leo," Victoria said, taking off her sweater after all, and wrapping it around the boy. It was ridiculously large on him, swallowing his small frame, but he grinned like she'd given him a superhero cape. "Now you guys are cold," Leo pointed out. "We'll survive," Daniel said, though he was rubbing his arms. The rain showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it was getting worse. A genuine storm, wind howling through the trees, thunder rolling overhead. "My car's on the west side lot," Victoria said. "We could make a run for it." "That's like half a mile," Daniel said. "In this, the kids would get hypothermia." "Your car?" He looked embarrassed. "North lot. Even farther." They were trapped. Together. No choice but to wait it out. Victoria sat down on one of the picnic benches, and after a moment, Daniel sat too at the opposite end, maintaining careful distance. Emma and Leo plopped down between them, effectively breaking whatever awkward barrier the adults were trying to maintain. "This is the best day ever," Leo declared. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "It's like an adventure." The adults exchanged a look amused, exhausted, still awkward, but with something softening around the edges. "Kids," Daniel muttered. "Right?" Victoria said. Another beat of silence. Then, "I'm sorry," they both said at exactly the same time. They stared at each other. "You have nothing to be sorry for," Daniel said. "I was God. I was rude. You were being kind." And I made it about my pride. And I've been kicking myself for 2 days. I shouldn't have assumed, Victoria countered. I came off like some wealthy savior. That's not what I meant. But I can see how it looked. You meant well. Intentions don't excuse impact. Daniel considered this, then nodded. Fair. But for what it's worth, Leo's been talking about you and Emma non-stop. He said I should find you and apologize. Emma too. She said we should come back to the restaurant and look for you. They both smiled, the tension finally cracking. Smart kids, Daniel said. Smarter than us? Apparently. Leo and Emma had moved to the edge of the pavilion, trying to catch raindrops in their mouths, shrieking with laughter every time thunder boomed. Your daughter's beautiful, Daniel said. She looks like you. Thank you. Leo's wonderful. Victoria stopped, unsure how to finish. I'm what? You're a really good father. I meant what I said at the restaurant. Watching you with him. It was the most real thing I'd seen in years. Daniel looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, marked by manual labor. Being a good dad is the only thing I'm good at anymore. I doubt that's true. My ex-wife would disagree. The words came out bitter. She left because I couldn't give her the life she wanted. Said I was a failure. Said Leo deserved better. Victoria felt anger flash through her. She's wrong. Is she? Daniel met her eyes. I'm working construction 12 hours a day just to keep us fed. I live in an apartment with peeling paint. Leo wears clothes that are too small because I can't afford new ones. His birthday dinner, the one you saw, wiped out half my grocery budget for the month. And yet he's happy, he's loved, he's secure. Victoria's voice was fierce. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And my daughter asked me last week if I even liked being her mom. Daniel looked stricken. Victoria, I work 18-hour days because work doesn't hurt. Work doesn't remind me that my husband died and left me alone with a child I don't know how to talk to anymore. The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. I throw money at every problem because money is easy. Connection is hard. Love is terrifying. You think you're failing because you can't buy him everything, but you're giving him the only thing that actually matters. You're showing up. Daniel stared at her, and Victoria realized she was shaking, not from cold, from the effort of saying things she'd never said out loud before. I'm sorry, she whispered. That was true, Daniel finished. That was true. Thunder cracked, making Emma jump. She ran back to Victoria, who pulled her daughter close instinctively. Leo crawled into Daniel's lap, and Daniel wrapped his arms around his son without thinking. The four of them sat there under the pavilion roof, two broken adults, two innocent children, trapped by rain and circumstance and something that felt almost like fate. How long have you been alone? Daniel asked quietly. 3 years. Cancer. Victoria's voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. You? 2 years. Abandonment. He tried to smile, less dignified. Pain isn't a competition. No, I guess not. Leo twisted to look up at his dad. Are you guys friends now? Daniel glanced at Victoria, eyebrow raised in question. Yeah, Victoria said, surprising herself. I think we might be. Good, Emma said, snuggling deeper into Daniel's flannel shirt. Because you're both really sad. And sad people should be friends. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Daniel laughed a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Kid's got a point. She usually does, Victoria admitted. The rain continued. Wind howled. Thunder rolled. But inside the pavilion, something warm was beginning to grow. Tell me about your husband, Daniel said. If that's okay. Victoria hesitated, then found herself talking. About David. About how they'd met in grad school. About building the company together. About the last 6 months of his life, when cancer had stolen him piece by piece. He made me promise not to shut down after he died, Victoria said. But I broke that promise. I shut down so completely I forgot what it felt like to be alive. And now? She looked at him, really looked at him. His kind eyes, his gentle smile. The way he held his son like Leo was the most precious thing in the world. Now I'm starting to remember, she said softly. Daniel held her gaze. Tell me about your company. What do you do? Tech. Software development, AI integration, cloud solutions. She saw his eyes start to glaze. Boring stuff. Not boring, just over my head. He grinned. I build things with my hands. Literal things. Houses, decks, additions. I used to be an architect. Used to be? His smile faded. Lost my firm in the divorce. She got the house, the business, everything. I got Leo, and a fresh start. He said it like he was trying to convince himself it was fair. Do you miss it? Architecture? Every single day. The admission seemed to cost him. I dream in blueprints. But dreams don't pay rent. They could, Victoria said carefully. If you had the capital. The resources. Daniel's expression shuddered immediately. Don't. I'm not. I don't need saving, Victoria. I'm doing fine. I know you are. That's not what I meant. She chose her words carefully. I meant that maybe we could help each other. You need resources. I need. What did she need? A reason to care about something real again. Daniel shook his head. That's a nice thought, but our worlds are too different. Are they? Victoria gestured to their kids, who were now playing some elaborate hand-clapping game they'd invented in the last 5 minutes. Seems like they crossed pretty easily. Kids don't know about class divides yet. Maybe they're smarter than we are. Daniel wanted to argue. She could see it, but he was also looking at Leo, at how happy his son was, at how naturally the boy had connected with Emma. And maybe, just maybe, Daniel was tired of fighting alone. The rain's slowing, he said instead, deflecting. He was right. The downpour had softened to a drizzle. The storm was passing. We should get the kids home, Victoria said. Get them into dry clothes. Yeah. Neither of them moved. Daniel? Victoria's voice was tentative. Could I have your number, just in case Emma wants to play with Leo sometime? She saw him war with himself, pride versus possibility, fear versus hope. Okay, he said finally. Yeah, that would be. Okay. They exchanged numbers, fingers fumbling with wet phones. Thank you, Victoria said, for not shutting me out again. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Emma and Leo protested loudly when they announced it was time to go, but both parents were firm. They walked together to the edge of the pavilion, looking out at the dripping trees and puddle-strewn paths. My car's that way, Victoria pointed. Mine's that way, Daniel said, pointing opposite. Guess this is goodbye. For now. They stood there awkwardly, neither quite sure how to end this strange, rain-soaked encounter. Then Leo hugged Emma goodbye, and Emma hugged Leo back, and somehow, impossibly, Daniel and Victoria ended up in a brief, awkward hug too. He smelled like rain and sawdust. She smelled like expensive perfume and wet wool. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. But it felt like something breaking open, something that had been closed for a very long time. 3 days passed before Victoria found the courage to text him. She must have typed and deleted a dozen messages. Too formal, too casual, too desperate, too cold. Finally, she settled on, Emma keeps asking about Leo. Would you both like to come over for dinner this weekend? She hit send before she could overthink it, then immediately regretted everything. Her penthouse? Really? That was her brilliant idea? Invite the man who'd already accused her of charity to her $60 million apartment? Idiot, she thought. He's going to think you're showing off. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped it. Daniel, Leo would love that, but I have a counteroffer come to our place instead. Nothing fancy, but the kids could play and we could order pizza, if that's not too modest for you. The last line had a tentative emoji, like he wasn't sure if he was joking or defending. Victoria smiled and typed back, Pizza sounds perfect. When and where? Saturday evening, Victoria stood outside Daniel's apartment building in the Sunset District, Emma bouncing beside her, and questioned every decision that had led her here. The building was old, not charming old, but genuinely weathered. Cracked stucco, a door that didn't quite hang straight, graffiti on the mailboxes that someone had tried to paint over. He's going to think you're judging him, her anxiety whispered. But Emma was already pressing the buzzer, and then Daniel's voice crackled through. Come on up, 3rd floor, apartment 3C. No elevator. They climbed 3 flights of stairs, Emma chattering about what game she wanted to play with Leo. Victoria's heart was hammering not from the climb, but from nerves she hadn't felt in years. Daniel opened the door before they could knock. He'd cleaned up fresh jeans, a button-down shirt that was slightly too big for him, hair still damp from a shower. He looked nervous, It made Victoria feel fractionally better about her own anxiety. "Hi," he said. "Come in. Fair warning, it's small." "Dad, they're here." Leo appeared behind him, grinning. "Emma, I set up my dinosaurs in my room. Want to see?" The kids vanished immediately, leaving the adults in the doorway. Victoria stepped inside, and Daniel closed the door behind her. He wasn't lying, it was small. The living room and kitchen were essentially one space, second-hand furniture that didn't quite match, a TV that was definitely a decade old, but it was clean, spotless, actually. And there were touches that made it feel like a home. Leo's artwork on the walls, photos in mismatched frames, a bookshelf organized by color. "It's not much," Daniel said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it's lovely," Victoria interrupted, and meant it. "It feels lived in, loved." Daniel relaxed slightly. "Can I get you something to drink? I have water, juice boxes, and beer that's probably expired." "Water's perfect." He poured her a glass, actual glass, not plastic, and they stood in the kitchen area, suddenly shy. "So," Daniel said. "So," Victoria echoed. "This is weird, right? Like, objectively weird?" Victoria laughed. "So weird." "Okay, good. I thought it was just me." He smiled, and some of the tension eased. "Pizza should be here in 20 minutes. I ordered half pepperoni, half cheese, because I figured Emma only eats cheese pizza." Victoria finished. "Good guess. Leo too." It's like they're the same kid in different bodies. From Leo's room came the sound of roaring dinosaurs and delighted laughter. "They're already best friends," Victoria observed. "Must be nice. That easy. Kids don't overthink things like we do. No. They just feel and act on it." Victoria set down her water glass. "I've forgotten how to do that." Daniel leaned against the counter, studying her. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really come over to our table that night, at the restaurant?" Victoria had known this question was coming. She'd prepared answers, polite, surface-level answers that would deflect and protect. But standing in his small kitchen, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, she found she couldn't lie. "Because you looked at Leo the way David used to look at Emma," she said quietly, "before he got sick, when he was still whole. And I realized I'd stopped looking at her like that, like she was magic. I'd started looking at her like she was another obligation on my calendar." She wrapped her arms around herself. "And I thought maybe if I could be close to that feeling, even for a second, I'd remember what it used to be like. When love wasn't scary." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Then, love is terrifying." "Yes. Especially when you've already lost someone." "Yes." He pushed off the counter, moved closer. Not invasively close, just present. "Can I show you something?" "Okay." He led her to the bookshelf, pulled out a worn leather portfolio. "I don't show this to people, but I think maybe you'll understand." He opened it, and Victoria's breath caught. They were architectural drawings. Beautiful, intricate blueprints of houses, not generic suburban boxes, but homes with character and soul. Each one was different, but they all had something in common. They looked like places where people could be happy. "You drew these?" Victoria asked, though she knew the answer. "Yeah, before everything fell apart." He flipped through the pages slowly. "This one was supposed to be our house. Mine, and Melissa's, and Leo's." The drawing showed a craftsman-style home with big windows and a wraparound porch, a tree swing in the yard, a reading nook built into the master bedroom. "It's beautiful, Daniel. It's gone." He closed the portfolio. "I designed it, started the build. Then Melissa met Richard at some charity gala, one of those events where she made me wear a borrowed suit because we couldn't afford to buy one." His voice went hollow. "Richard owned half of Nob Hill, made his money in real estate development. He saw the house we were building and offered to buy it. Offered her a life I couldn't compete with. Daniel. She took it. The house, Richard, the life. Filed for divorce before the foundation was even poured. The judge gave her the business because it was in both our names, and she argued I'd been the one to tank it by failing to prioritize income." He laughed bitterly. "Basically, I was too busy being a dad and not enough of a breadwinner." Victoria felt anger surge through her, hot and protective. "That's humiliating?" "Yeah. It was. Daniel put the portfolio back on the shelf. I lost everything except Leo. The firm, the house, my reputation. Other architects won't hire me because Melissa spread the word that I was unreliable. So now I hammer nails for $12 an hour and try to convince my son that we're okay. But you are okay, Victoria said fiercely. You're more than okay. You're broke, bitter, a cautionary tale, present, loving, real. She grabbed his arm, made him look at her. Your ex-wife is an idiot. And Richard, whoever he is, he bought a house, but he didn't build one. There's a difference. Daniel stared at her, something raw and painful in his expression. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it to be nice. I'm saying it because it's true. Victoria's grip tightened. I've spent 3 years building an empire and losing my humanity. You've spent 2 years losing an empire and keeping your humanity. I know which one is harder. His eyes glistened. Victoria. Show me more, she said, softer now. Show me what you would build if you could. So he did. He pulled out sketch after sketch homes designed for specific types of families. A house with ramps and wide doorways for wheelchair access. A tiny house optimized for minimal environmental impact. A community center with spaces for art and music and gathering. This is my favorite, he said, showing her a drawing of a small cottage. It's designed for single parents. See? The bedroom is elevated slightly so the parent can hear if their kid calls out at night, but there's still privacy. The kitchen has a window that looks into the play area. Everything's designed around connection and safety. Victoria traced the lines with her finger. Daniel, these are incredible. Why aren't you building them? Because dreams require capital. He said it simply, without rancor, just fact. What if you had capital? He looked at her sharply. We're not doing this. Doing what? The thing where you swoop in and save me. I told you. I'm not trying to save you, Victoria interrupted. I'm trying to. God, I don't even know what I'm trying to do. But looking at these drawings, seeing what you could create, it makes me angry that you're not creating them. Not because I pity you. Because the world needs these. And you're the only one who can design them. The world seems to be managing fine without me. Is it? Victoria challenged. Because from where I'm standing, the world is full of houses that are just boxes with expensive finishes. Nobody's designing homes for how people actually live. For single parents. For disabled folks. For people who want community instead of isolation. Daniel was quiet, his jaw working. I have money, Victoria said carefully. More money than I know what to do with. I invest in tech startups constantly. Companies that promise to disrupt industries they don't understand. I would much rather invest in something real. Something that matters. You don't know if I can deliver. Yes, I do. I can see it. She gestured to the sketches. You're not some starry-eyed kid with a dream. You're a trained architect with experience and talent, who got screwed over by someone who didn't deserve you. Victoria. Let me finish. She took a breath. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a partnership. You design homes that matter. I provide the capital and the business infrastructure. We split profits fairly. You maintain creative control. I handle the parts you hate: budgets, contracts, marketing. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's insane. Why? Because we barely know each other. Because you're a billionaire and I'm a construction worker. Because this is a good idea, Victoria finished. It's a good idea, Daniel, and you know it. He wanted to argue. She could see it in his face, all the pride and fear and old wounds rising up to protect him. But he was also looking at his drawings like they were old friends he'd abandoned. I can't, his voice cracked. I can't afford to hope again. Do you understand that? Hope is expensive, and I'm broke. Victoria's chest ached. I understand. Believe me, I understand. But staying safe is costing you too. It's costing you your dreams, your passion, the work you were meant to do. The doorbell rang, pizza arriving. Daniel didn't move. Neither did Victoria. Think about it, she said softly. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. He nodded slowly, then went to answer the door. They ate pizza on the floor of Leo's room, the kids chattering between them, creating a buffer of innocence against the heavy conversation that had just happened. But Victoria caught Daniel watching her throughout the meal. Not with suspicion anymore. With something closer to wonder. After dinner, while the kids played, Daniel made coffee, cheap instant stuff that Victoria pretended was fine. "Can I ask you something now?" Daniel said, sitting beside her on the worn couch. "Fair's fair. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just business. I've met investors. They don't look at people the way you look at me." Victoria's heart stuttered. "How do I look at you?" "Like, I'm not broken." The words hung in the air between them. "You're not broken," Victoria whispered. "You're healing. There's a difference. So are you. Am I?" "Yeah." He set down his coffee mug, turned to face her fully. "You came to the restaurant with Emma, and you were trying so hard to be present for her. I saw it. The effort it took. And then you saw me with Leo, and something in you woke up. I could see it happen." Victoria's eyes stung. "I thought I'd forgotten how." "How to what?" "Feel. Connect. Care about anything except not hurting." A tear slipped down her cheek, and she wiped it away impatiently. "David made me promise I'd live after he died. Not just survive, live. And I've been failing that promise every single day for 3 years." Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, real, solid. "Maybe," he said quietly, "we're both tired of failing." Victoria looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. "Maybe we could try not failing together. Is that what this is?" "I don't know what this is, do you?" Daniel smiled, small, tentative, but genuine. "No, but I think I'd like to find out." From Leo's room came a crash, then immediate laughter. "We're okay," Emma called. "The dinosaurs just had a war." "As long as nobody's bleeding," Daniel called back. They sat there, hands still clasped, coffee getting cold, while their children played and the San Francisco fog rolled in outside the window. "I meant what I said," Victoria murmured, "about the partnership. It's a real offer. I know, I'm scared of it. So am I. But you're still offering. Because some things are worth being scared for." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Let me think about it. Really think about it. Not just react from fear or pride, but actually consider it. That's all I ask." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, "Stay for a movie? The kids would love it. We have popcorn. Well, microwave popcorn. And the TV's small, but..." "I'd love to," Victoria said. "Really." So they did. They watched some animated film about singing animals that Victoria had seen 40 times with Emma but pretended was new. The kids sprawled on the floor with blankets. Daniel and Victoria sat on the couch, carefully not touching but acutely aware of each other. Halfway through, Emma climbed up and curled against Victoria's side. Leo did the same with Daniel. And then, slowly, Leo started to lean toward Emma, and Emma shifted. And somehow, without quite planning it, all 4 of them ended up in a pile, kids in the middle, adults on the ends, bridged by small bodies and shared warmth. Victoria looked across at Daniel over the children's heads. He was already looking at her. And in his eyes, she saw it. The terrifying, wonderful possibility that maybe they were building something here. Not a house, not a business, something that looked a lot like family. Have you ever met someone whose story made you realize you weren't alone in your struggle? Someone who saw your pain because they'd lived through their own? Tell us in the comments about a connection that changed how you saw yourself. The movie ended, but nobody moved. Leo had fallen asleep first, his small body going limp against Emma. Then Emma dozed off, her head tilted at an angle that would definitely give her a crick in her neck. Victoria started to shift, to wake her daughter and announce it was time to leave, but Daniel whispered, "Wait, just another minute?" So they waited. The apartment was quiet except for the children's soft breathing and the distant sound of traffic outside. The fog had pressed against the windows, turning the city beyond into a blur of lights and shadow. "I haven't felt this peaceful in years," Victoria admitted quietly. "Me either." Daniel looked down at the kids, then back at her. "It's strange, isn't it? We barely know each other, but this feels right," Victoria finished. "It feels right," which is terrifying. Why terrifying? Because right things can still go wrong. Because I've learned that feeling safe is usually just the prelude to losing everything. She paused. Because I'm starting to care, and caring means I can be hurt again. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, after Melissa left, I told myself I'd never let anyone close again. It was easier that way. Safer. Leo and me against the world. Nobody else allowed in. What changed? You did, he said it simply. You walked up to my table in that restaurant, and you looked at me like I was worth knowing. Not pitying, not judging. Just worth knowing. And it woke something up that I thought was dead. Victoria's breath caught. Daniel, I'm not saying this to put pressure on you, he continued. I'm saying it because I think you need to know that you're not alone in being scared. I'm terrified. But I'm also, he smiled. I'm also excited. And I haven't been excited about anything except Leo in 2 years. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know how to do this, how to be open, available. I built walls so high I forgot there was a world outside them. Then maybe we tear them down together, slowly, one brick at a time. She wanted to kiss him. The impulse was sudden and overwhelming to lean across their sleeping children and press her lips to his, and see if the connection she felt was real or just loneliness in disguise. But she didn't. Not yet. This was too important to rush. Instead, she said, I should get Emma home. It's late. Daniel nodded, clearly feeling the same pull and the same restraint. Yeah. Of course. He gently extracted himself from the pile, then carefully lifted Emma. The girl stirred but didn't wake, just mumbled something about dinosaurs and snuggled against his chest. Victoria stood, grabbing her purse, following him to the door. She's heavier than she looks, Daniel grunted good-naturedly, adjusting his grip. I forget sometimes that she's growing up. Victoria's voice went soft. I forget to notice. You're noticing now. That counts. They made it down the 3 flights of stairs, Daniel carrying Emma the whole way while Victoria held his apartment keys and wondered when her life had become so surreal. Her town car was waiting at the curb. She'd texted her driver earlier. He stepped out to open the door, his expression carefully neutral at the sight of his billionaire employer with a strange man carrying her daughter. Daniel settled Emma into the back seat, buckling her in with practiced ease. He stepped back, hands in his pockets, suddenly awkward again. Thank you, Victoria said. For tonight. For showing me your work. For trusting me. Thank you for seeing it as work, not just dreams. They stood on the sidewalk, fog swirling around them, neither quite ready to say goodbye. I'll text you, Victoria said. About the partnership. I'll put together a proposal. Something real. With numbers and structure. And, Victoria. Daniel stepped closer. You don't have to sell me on it anymore. I'm in. Her eyes widened. You are? I spent the last 2 hours watching you with Emma and Leo. Watching how you lit up when you talked about potential. How you made instant mac and cheese without complaining. How you sat on my crappy couch like it was worth $1 million just because it meant we could all be together. He smiled. Anyone who can do that isn't offering charity. They're offering partnership. Real partnership. Victoria felt something break open in her chest, something that had been locked tight since David died. I won't let you down. I know, and I won't let you down either. Deal? Deal. They shook hands, formal, businesslike. But when their palms met, neither pulled away immediately. The handshake lingered, became something else. Not quite romantic, not quite platonic. Just connection, pure and electric. Victoria Chen, he said softly. Who are you really? I don't know anymore, she admitted. But I think I'd like to find out. Me too, on both counts. She finally released his hand, climbed into the car beside Emma. Daniel closed the door gently, then stepped back as the car pulled away from the curb. Victoria looked back through the rear window. He stood there on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. The fog wrapped around him, until he was just a silhouette, then nothing at all. But she could still feel the warmth of his hand in hers. The next week was a blur of activity. Victoria dove into the partnership with the same intensity she brought to every project, which meant 18-hour days, dozens of phone calls, and a business proposal that was 40 pages long by the time she finished. But this time, it didn't feel like escape. It felt like purpose. She had her lawyers draft partnership agreements that protected Daniel's creative control, while giving her the business oversight she needed. She set up an LLC, Ross and Chen Design, and funded the initial capital herself. She found an office space in Soma, small but with good light, perfect for a fledgling firm. And every night, she called Daniel and talked through the details. "You're moving too fast," he said during one call, but he was laughing. "I can barely keep up." "Is that a complaint?" "No. It's amazing. You're amazing. He paused. "I'm not used to people believing in me like this." "Get used to it." They talked about more than business too. About Emma's school play. About Leo's obsession with learning state capitals. About their favorite movies, foods, childhood memories. Victoria learned that Daniel had grown up in Sacramento, son of a contractor who taught him to build before he could read. That he'd put himself through architecture school on scholarships and night jobs. That he'd proposed to Melissa on a beach in Big Sur, thinking she was the love of his life. Daniel learned that Victoria had immigrated from Hong Kong at age 8, built her first computer at 12, started her company at 25 with David as her co-founder and then husband. That she'd been happy once, genuinely happy, before cancer had stolen it all. "Do you think we get more than one chance at happiness?" Daniel asked one night, his voice quiet over the phone. Victoria was in her office, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. It was past midnight. She should have been exhausted. Instead, she felt awake for the first time in years. "I didn't used to think so," she said. "But now, maybe we do. I'd like to believe that." "Then believe it, with me." A pause, then, "Okay, I will." 3 weeks after the pizza night, they met at the new office space. Daniel walked in carrying a box of his drawings, his eyes widening as he took in the space. Exposed brick. High ceilings. Large windows with a view of the bay. Drafting tables already set up. Top-of-the-line computers. Everything an architect could need. "Victoria," he breathed. "This is yours," she said, standing in the center of the room. "Well, ours. But mostly yours. You're the creative lead. I'm just the money and the business brain." He set down the box, walked slowly around the space, touching the drafting table, the window frame, the blank wall where he could put up sketches. Then he turned to her, and his eyes were wet. "I thought this was over for me," he said roughly. "I thought I'd lost my shot, that I'd spend the rest of my life building other people's dreams, while mine collected dust in a portfolio. Not anymore." "Not anymore," he echoed, and then impulsively, joyfully, he crossed the space and hugged her. It was different from the awkward hug in the rain. This one was tight, grateful, full of hope. Victoria melted into it, her arms wrapping around his back, breathing in the scent of sawdust and possibility. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me." They pulled back slightly, but didn't fully separate. His hands stayed on her waist, hers rested on his shoulders. And for the first time, Victoria thought, this could be something. This could be real. "We should celebrate," Daniel said. "Coffee? Lunch? Something?" "Both. All of it. Let's take the day off." Can billionaires take days off? This one can. So they did. They walked through the Ferry Building, sampling cheese and chocolate like tourists. They took the kids who they'd arranged for Margaret and Miguel to watch, now conspiring together, to Ocean Beach, where Emma and Leo built sandcastles, while Daniel and Victoria sat on a blanket and talked about architectural theory and software design, and whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. "They're clearly sandwiches," Victoria argued. "Meat between bread. Definition satisfied." "But the bread isn't separate," Daniel countered. "It's hinged. That makes it fundamentally different." "You're being pedantic." "I'm being architecturally precise." They were laughing, truly laughing, when Emma ran up, dripping wet from the waves, despite Victoria's explicit instructions to stay dry. "Mom, Leo says his dad can build a castle in real life. Can you build castles?" "No, but I can design them," Daniel said, pulling Leo onto his lap. The boy was equally soaked. "Maybe one day you two can live in one." "Together?" Leo asked hopefully. The adults exchanged a glance loaded with possibility and fear, and the beginning of something neither wanted to name yet. "Maybe," Victoria said carefully. "Would you like that?" Both kids erupted in enthusiastic agreement, already planning room assignments and where the game room would be. Daniel met Victoria's eyes over their children's heads. "They're moving faster than we are. Kids usually do. Should we slow down?" Victoria thought about her empty penthouse, about the 3 years of frozen grief, about the way Daniel looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. "No," she said firmly. "I don't think we should." That evening, Daniel insisted on cooking dinner at Victoria's place. "Fair's fair," he said. "You came to my apartment. I should see your castle." Victoria warned him repeatedly. "It's a lot," she said, as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse. "It's too much. Don't judge me." "I promise not to judge." The doors opened directly into her apartment, all 6,000 square feet of it. Daniel stopped dead. "Holy, I know. It's obscene. It's incredible." He walked slowly through the living room, taking in the view, the art, the furniture that probably cost more than his yearly salary. "Victoria, this is lonely," she finished. "It's lonely. All this space, all this expensive stuff, and it just echoes." Daniel turned to look at her, understanding dawning. "That's why you don't want to be here. I work, so I don't have to come home." He crossed to her, took her hands. "Then let's fill it with noise, with mess, with life." "How?" "Like this." He called the kids over. "Emma, Leo house rules for tonight. You can run, you can shout, you can play whatever games you want. This place needs to remember what it's like to be alive." Both children looked at Victoria for permission. She nodded, feeling something unlock in her chest. What followed was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. Leo and Emma raced through the rooms, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. They played hide-and-seek in the walk-in closets. They made a fort out of Victoria's designer throw pillows. They accidentally knocked over a vase, expensive, irreplaceable, and Victoria didn't even flinch. "It's just stuff," she said when Daniel started to apologize. "It can be replaced." "This," she gestured to the children's joy. "This can't." Daniel cooked pasta in her state-of-the-art kitchen, making a mess of her pristine counters with flour and sauce and laughter. They ate at the dining table that seated 12, the 4 of them clustered at one end, talking over each other. After dinner, they played board games Uno and Monopoly Junior, and some made-up game Leo invented that made no sense but had them all crying with laughter. And when the kids finally crashed, asleep in Emma's room in a tangle of blankets and stuffed animals, Victoria and Daniel stood on the balcony, overlooking the city. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly, "for bringing life back into this place. Thank you for letting us in." They stood shoulder to shoulder, the night cool, the city sparkling below. "Daniel," Victoria's voice was tentative, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are we—" She paused, trying to find the right words. "Is this just about the business, about the kids being friends?" Daniel turned to face her fully. "Do you want it to be?" "No." "Then no, it's not." He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm falling for you, Victoria. I've been falling since the restaurant. Maybe even before, maybe since, I saw you watching me with Leo like we were something precious." Victoria's breath caught. "I'm falling too. And it terrifies me." "Me too. But I don't want to stop." "Me either." They leaned in slowly, giving each other time to pull back, to reconsider, to protect themselves. But neither did. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than an answer. And when they pulled back, both were smiling. "Well," Daniel said, "that was worth being scared for." "Yeah, definitely worth it." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper. Victoria's hands fisted in his shirt. Daniel's fingers threaded through her hair. Years of loneliness and loss melted away, replaced by something warm and real, and possible. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he said. "Leo needs his own bed, and I need to process the fact that I just kissed a billionaire on her penthouse balcony." Victoria laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds like a fairy tale." "Maybe it is. Fairy tales end happily. So will this one." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But part of her, the part that had been broken and rebuilt wrong, whispered that happy endings were for people who hadn't already used theirs up. Daniel saw the doubt flicker across her face. He cupped her cheek gently. "Hey, we're going to be okay. Both of us. Together. Promise?" "Promise." He kissed her once more, brief, sweet, then went to wake Leo. Victoria watched them leave, her fingers touching her lips, her heart doing something it hadn't done in years. It was hoping, and for tonight, that was enough. The article appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle's business section on a Wednesday morning. Victoria was in a meeting with her board when Margaret burst in something she never did. Her face was pale, her phone clutched in her hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." Margaret's voice was tight. "Now." Victoria excused herself, following Margaret into the hallway. Her assistant pulled up the article on her phone, and Victoria felt the floor drop out from under her. Tech billionaire Victoria Chen's new charity project, Struggling Single Dad Gets Makeover. The photo was from the restaurant. Someone had taken it, Victoria, approaching Daniel and Leo's table, her hand extended. The angle made it look condescending, performative. Victoria's hands shook as she read. Sources close to Chen Technologies confirm that CEO Victoria Chen has taken a personal interest in Daniel Ross, a divorced construction worker, after encountering him at an upscale restaurant. Chen has reportedly set Ross up in a new office space, funded what insiders are calling a vanity project architecture firm, and has been seen spending considerable time with Ross and his 7-year-old son. "It's the billionaire savior complex," says Dr. Patricia Morgan, a sociologist at Stanford. "Wealthy individuals who need to feel they're making a difference by rescuing someone they perceive as less fortunate. It's patronizing at best, exploitative at worst." Ross, who lost his architecture firm in a contentious divorce 2 years ago, could not be reached for comment. Friends of Ross's ex-wife, Melissa Ross, now Melissa Hartman, suggest that Ross has a history of using people to advance his career. "Daniel always needed someone to prop him up," says Hartman, now married to real estate developer Richard Hartman. "I'm not surprised he found another successful woman to support him. Some people are just takers." The question remains, is Chen genuinely interested in Ross's architectural talent, or is this simply a lonely widow's expensive midlife crisis? Chen's late husband, David Chen, died of cancer 3 years ago, leaving her as the sole head of their billion-dollar empire. Since his death, Chen has been known for her reclusive lifestyle and ruthless business tactics, earning her the nickname, the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley. Perhaps melting that ice requires a human interest project, even if that project is a struggling single father who may or may not be a willing participant in his own rescue. Victoria read it twice, then a third time, each word cutting deeper. The article continued with speculation about their relationship, quotes from unnamed sources at her company, suggesting she was distracted lately, not focused on business. There were references to Ross and Chen design, framed as if she'd bought Daniel a toy to play with. Her phone started buzzing. Texts from board members, emails from her PR team, calls from investors, and one text from Daniel, "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. Daniel had seen the article at 6 a.m., when a coworker showed it to him at the construction site with a smirk. "Didn't know you were dating a billionaire, Ross. Nice work if you can get it." The implication was clear. The other guys gathered around, reading over each other's shoulders, their expressions ranging from amusement to disgust. "Gold digger," someone muttered. "Can't make it on his own, needs a woman to save him." Again, Melissa was right about him. Daniel's hands clenched into fists, his face burned. Every insecurity, every wound Melissa had left, they all came roaring back. Taker, user, not enough. He left the site without clocking out, drove straight to the office space Victoria had rented. Their office, Ross and Chen Design. Except now he couldn't look at it without seeing what everyone else saw. Proof that he needed saving. Proof that he couldn't succeed on his own. Proof that Melissa had been right, he was a failure who latched onto successful women and dragged them down. He pulled out his phone, typed the text to Victoria with shaking hands, "We need to talk." Then he sat in his car and waited for his world to collapse. Again. They met at the office at noon. Neutral ground, though nothing felt neutral anymore. Victoria arrived first, her face composed, but her eyes giving her away, red-rimmed, exhausted. She'd been crying. Daniel had never seen her cry. "Daniel," she started, but he cut her off. "Is it true?" His voice was flat, cold, protective armor snapping into place. "Did you tell your people I was a personal project?" "What? No, I would never." "Because that's what they're saying. That you got bored playing billionaire and decided to slum it with a charity case." "That's not what this is," Victoria's voice cracked. "You know that's not what this is, do I?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "Because from where I'm standing, It looks exactly like what the article says. Rich woman takes pity on poor single dad. Sets him up with a fake company to make herself feel good. Everyone wins, right? You get your human interest story, I get to play architect. It's not fake. Your talent is real. The partnership is real. Is it? Daniel pulled out his phone. Showed her the LLC documents his lawyer had reviewed that morning, the ones he'd finally gotten around to reading carefully. You own 70% of Ross and Chen Design. I own 30%. You control all final decisions. I'm essentially an employee with a fancy title. Victoria paled. That's standard for investor relationships when one party provides all the capital. Don't. Daniel's voice was sharp. Don't give me business speak. Just tell me the truth. Did you give me the smaller share because you don't actually believe I can do this? Or because you like having control? Neither. I structured it that way to protect both of us legally. If the business fails, you're not liable for. If the business fails, Daniel laughed again, hollow. Not when, if. You already think it's going to fail. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Victoria? Because right now, everyone in this city thinks I'm using you. And everyone at my construction site thinks I'm a gold digger who can't make it on his own. And my ex-wife is in the paper saying I'm a taker. And you know what the worst part is? What? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Part of me thinks they're right. The words hung in the air like poison. Victoria stepped toward him. Daniel, you're not. Don't. He backed away. Don't tell me what I am or what I'm not. You don't know. You met me 6 weeks ago. You saw me having dinner with my kid and decided I was some kind of noble poverty case you could fix. That's not true, isn't it? Daniel's voice rose. Be honest, Victoria. Really honest. Did you approach me that night because you saw me as an equal? Or because you felt sorry for me? Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was damning. I thought so, Daniel said quietly. It was both, Victoria finally said, tears streaming down her face now. Yes, I saw that you were struggling. Yes, I wanted to help. But I also saw someone real, someone good, someone who loved his son in a way that made me remember what love looked like. But you still thought I needed saving. And you still think accepting help makes you weak. Victoria's voice broke. That's the real problem here, Daniel. Not what I offered, but that you can't accept it without feeling like it diminishes you. Because it does, Daniel shouted. Don't you get it? Every time someone helps me, every time I can't do it on my own, it proves what Melissa said, that I'm not enough, that I'll never be enough. Your ex-wife was wrong. Was she? Daniel gestured around the office. Look at this place. Look at what you gave me. I didn't earn this. I didn't build this. You handed it to me because you felt bad for me. And now, the whole city knows it. I gave you this because you're talented, because your designs are brilliant, and the world needs them. You gave me this because I made you feel something. Daniel's voice was raw now, all his pain spilling out. Because you've been dead inside since your husband died, and watching me with Leo made you feel alive again. I was never a partner to you. I was a mirror. A way for you to feel human again. Victoria recoiled like he'd slapped her. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Daniel's hands were shaking. Do you know what the guys at my site said this morning? They said, I must be really good in bed to land a billionaire. They asked if you paid me extra for services rendered. He couldn't finish. His voice broke, his face crumpling. Victoria moved toward him instinctively. But he held up a hand. Don't. Please. I can't do this. Daniel, please. We can fix this. We can release a statement. We can. A statement? Daniel laughed bitterly. A statement won't change what people think. It won't change what I think. I'm the guy who lost everything to one woman and then let another woman bail him out. That's my story now. That's all I am. You're so much more than that. To you, maybe. To the world, I'm just another failed man who needed a woman to save him. He grabbed his portfolio off the drafting table, the one with all his designs. I'm sorry, Victoria. I thought I could do this. I thought I could be your partner. But I can't. Not like this. Not when everyone thinks I'm using you. I don't care what everyone thinks. Well, I do. Daniel's voice echoed in the empty space. I care that my son has to hear that his dad is a charity case. I care that everyone at my work thinks I'm a joke. I care that your board members are questioning your judgment because you're wasting money on me. You're not a waste. Yes, I am. Daniel's voice went quiet. Defeated. I'm exactly what Melissa said I was. Someone who can't make it on his own. Someone who drags successful women down with him. Daniel, please. I need to go. He headed for the door, portfolio clutched to his chest like armor. So, that's it? Victoria's voice was sharp with grief and anger. You're just going to walk away? Give up on everything we built? We didn't build anything. You built it. I was just standing here while you paid for it. That's not true, and you know it. Daniel stopped at the door, his back to her. The kids, Emma and Leo. They're friends. We should let them keep seeing each other. But you and me? We're done. It's better this way. How is this better? Victoria was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. How is running away better than fighting for what we have? Because what we have is built on pity and loneliness, not respect. You can't partner with someone you feel sorry for, Victoria. And I can't be with someone who makes me feel like I need saving. I never thought you needed saving. I thought we could save each other. Daniel's hand was on the doorknob. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe neither of us can be saved. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Victoria stood alone in the beautiful office space, surrounded by drafting tables and equipment and potential that now felt like a monument to her own arrogance. She pulled out her phone, composed a text to Daniel. Please don't do this. Please let me explain. She deleted it, unsent. What could she say that wouldn't sound like more pity, more condescension, more proof that she saw him as a project instead of a person? Her phone rang. Margaret. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, her assistant said. They want to discuss the Ross situation and your judgment. Victoria, they're talking about a vote of no confidence. Let them vote, Victoria said numbly. I don't care. What? I said I don't care, Margaret. Schedule the meeting. I'll deal with it. She hung up. She sank down onto the floor of the empty office, this space she'd created, with such hope, such certainty, that she was doing something good, and let herself break. Because Daniel was right about one thing. She had seen him as a way to feel human again. She'd told herself it was about his talent, about doing good in the world, about building something meaningful. But the truth, the ugly, complicated truth, was that she'd needed him just as much as he'd needed her resources. And she'd been so focused on what she could give him that she'd never considered what she was taking in return. His dignity, his agency, his ability to feel like an equal partner in his own life. I've ruined everything, she thought. Again. Her phone buzzed with another email from the board, another text from her PR team, another crisis demanding her attention. But all she could think about was the look on Daniel's face when he'd said, maybe neither of us can be saved. And the terrible possibility that he might be right. Daniel made it to his car before the breakdown hit. He sat in the driver's seat, portfolio on his lap, and couldn't remember how to breathe. The article's words kept echoing. Taker. Charity case. Using people. Not enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Miguel. Bro, everyone's talking about the article. You okay? No. He wasn't okay. Another text. This time from a number he didn't recognize. Is it true you're dating Victoria Chen? Can we interview you? He blocked the number. Then, he turned off his phone entirely. He drove home on autopilot, picked up Leo from the after-school program, and somehow made it through dinner without his son noticing anything was wrong. But at bedtime, Leo asked, Can we see Emma and Victoria this weekend? Daniel's chest constricted. Maybe not this weekend, buddy. Why not? We're all busy. Leo's face fell. Did you have a fight? Kids were too perceptive, sort of. Did you say sorry? How do you apologize for being exactly what everyone says you are? It's complicated. Leo. Miss Patterson says sorry fixes most things. Not this time. Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then, I really like Emma. And I really like Victoria. She's nice to you. She makes you smile. Daniel's eyes burned. I know, buddy. Are you going to fix it? I don't know if I can. You should try. That's what you always tell me. To try, even when it's hard. Out of the mouths of babes. Daniel tucked Leo in, then went to his bedroom and stared at the ceiling until dawn, replaying the conversation with Victoria on an endless loop. He'd been cruel. He knew it. He'd said things designed to hurt, to push her away, to make her prove him right about not being worthy of her. And she'd let him leave. Which meant he'd been right all along. She couldn't really want someone like him. Not as an equal, not as a partner. The article had just made her realize what he'd known from the beginning. They were from different worlds, and his presence in hers would always be seen as opportunistic. Better to end it now, he told himself, before Leo gets more attached, before I start believing I could actually deserve her. But he'd already started believing it. And that was the most painful part of all. 5 days passed. 5 days of silence that felt like 5 years. Victoria went through the motions. She attended the emergency board meeting and defended her decision to invest in Ross and Chen Design with charts and projections that proved the venture was sound. She faced down the vote of no confidence and won barely. But none of it mattered. She came home to her echoing penthouse and realized Daniel had been right about one thing. All this space, all this wealth, meant nothing without people to fill it. Emma noticed immediately. Mom, why aren't we seeing Leo anymore? We're all just busy right now, sweetheart. That's what Dad said. But you guys had a fight, didn't you? Victoria couldn't lie to her daughter. Not anymore. Yes, we did. About what? How did you explain adult complications to an 8-year-old? How did you say, I tried to help someone and accidentally made him feel small, and he tried to protect himself and accidentally broke both our hearts? We wanted different things, Victoria said carefully. That's not true. Emma's voice was firm, so much older than her years. You both want the same thing. You want to be happy, and you were happy together. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. You're just both scared. Emma climbed into Victoria's lap, something she hadn't done in months. I'm scared too sometimes, of making friends, of trying new things. But you always tell me that being scared is okay, as long as I don't let it stop me. Victoria held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. And from Daniel. He's brave, Mom. He takes care of Leo all by himself, and he works really hard, and he's still nice to everyone. That's brave. Yes, he is brave. So why are you letting him go? Victoria didn't have an answer that made sense. Daniel returned to construction. Back to 12-hour days and aching muscles and the comfortable numbness of manual labor. The guys had stopped teasing him about the article, mostly because his foreman had threatened to fire anyone who brought it up. But Daniel could feel their judgment anyway. See it in their sideways glances and careful distance. He was alone again. Just like he'd been after Melissa left. Except this time, it hurt more. Because this time, he'd chosen it. On the 5th night, Miguel cornered him at the end of shift. We need to talk. I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like hell. You're working like a man, trying to outrun his own thoughts. And you haven't mentioned Leo once this week, which means something's really wrong. Daniel kept walking toward his car. Miguel followed. Look, I read the article, Miguel said. And, yeah, it was a hit piece. But so what? Since when do you care what reporters think? It's not about the article. Then what's it about? Daniel stopped walking. It's about the fact that she's a billionaire who could have anyone, and I'm a divorced construction worker who lost everything. It's about the fact that everyone, including me, knows I'm not good enough for her. That's bullshit. Is it? Name one thing I bring to the table besides need. Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then, you bring honesty, heart, a kid who makes her daughter happy, the ability to design buildings that actually mean something. And judging by the way she looked at you that day I dropped off your tools at the office before all this blew up, you bring her something she hasn't had in years. What's that? A reason to smile. Daniel's chest tightened. That's not enough. Why not? When did love become about what you bring, instead of who you are? I don't. Daniel stopped. Love. He hadn't said that word, hadn't let himself think it, but it was true. He loved Victoria Chen. Loved her fierce intelligence and her wounded heart, and the way she'd tried so hard to be present for Emma. Loved the way she'd looked at his drawings like they were masterpieces. Loved that she'd sat on his ratty couch eating pizza and laughing like money didn't matter. He loved her. And he'd walked away because he was too scared to believe she could love him back. I messed up, Daniel said quietly. I said terrible things to her, things I can't take back. So apologize. It's not that simple. It never is. But you've got two choices, man. You can stay here, safe and miserable, proving to yourself that you're not worthy of good things. Or you can go to her, tell her the truth, and let her decide if you're worth a second chance. What if she says no? Then at least you tried. At least you didn't let fear make your choices for you. Daniel thought about Leo, about his son's words. You should try. That's what you always tell me. I don't even know what to say to her, Daniel admitted. Start with the truth. That's always a good place to begin. Victoria was in her office late on Friday night when Margaret appeared in the doorway. Go home, Margaret said. You've been here for 14 hours. I'm fine. You're miserable. There's a difference. Victoria looked up from her computer spreadsheets she wasn't actually reading. Did you need something? Margaret came in and closed the door. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. What? You're doing it again. What you did after David died. You're burying yourself in work because you're too scared to feel. That's not. Yes, it is. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. You opened yourself up to Daniel and his son. You let yourself hope, and when it got hard, when it got messy and public and scary, you let him walk away. You didn't fight for it. He's the one who left. Because he was scared. Because that article triggered every insecurity he has. And instead of reassuring him, instead of proving that you saw him as an equal, you let him go. You chose safety over love. Victoria felt something crack in her chest. I didn't want to trap him. I didn't want him to stay out of obligation. Did you ever consider that maybe he wanted to stay? That maybe he was waiting for you to fight for him the way you fought for every business deal you've ever made? He said awful things. And you've probably said awful things to people you love when you were scared. David forgave you every time. Why can't you extend the same grace to Daniel? Victoria stood up, pacing to the window. The city sprawled below her, glittering and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably putting Leo to bed, reading him a story, being the father that made Victoria believe in goodness again. I don't know how, Victoria whispered. I don't know how to fight for someone when I'm not sure I deserve them. None of us deserve love, Margaret said softly. It's not about deserving, it's about choosing. Every day, you choose to show up. You choose to be vulnerable. You choose to believe that another person is worth the risk of being hurt. I'm so tired of being hurt. I know, but you're also tired of being alone. Margaret came to stand beside her. David made you promise to live, not just survive. Are you living right now? Victoria looked at her reflection in the dark glass expensive suit, perfect hair, empty eyes. No, she admitted, I'm not. Then what are you going to do about it? Victoria thought about Daniel's face when he'd kissed her on the balcony, the hope in his eyes, the tentative joy. She thought about how easily she'd let him walk away, how she'd stood there and watched him leave instead of chasing after him, grabbing his hand, refusing to let fear win. I'm going to fix it, Victoria said. I'm going to tell him the truth. Which is that I love him, that I'm terrified, that I messed up by not fighting harder when he tried to push me away, and that I want another chance. A real chance, as equals. Margaret smiled. Now you're living. Victoria grabbed her coat. I'm going there now. It's 11 p.m. I don't care. I've wasted enough time. She was halfway to the elevator when her phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, she wouldn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Chen? An unfamiliar voice. Male, professional. This is Officer Martinez with the SFPD. I'm calling about Daniel Ross. He listed you as an emergency contact. Victoria's world tilted. What happened? Is he okay? There was an accident at a construction site. Mr. Ross was injured. He's being taken to San Francisco General. He's conscious, but I'm on my way. She didn't remember running to the elevator. Didn't remember telling her driver to break every speed limit. She only knew that Daniel was hurt, and she needed to get to him. Please, she prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Please let him be okay. I'll do anything. Just let him be okay. Daniel had been working late overtime. He needed to make up for the days he'd missed spiraling after the article. He'd been carrying lumber across the site when the stack shifted. Everything happened in slow motion, the boards falling, the shout of warning, the realization he couldn't move fast enough. The lumber had caught him across the chest and shoulder, knocked him down. Nothing broken, the EMTs said he was lucky, but bruised ribs and a possible concussion meant hospital observation. "Is there someone we can call?" the paramedic had asked. Daniel had almost said no, almost said he was alone. But then he'd thought, what if something had happened? What if I'd been hurt worse? Leo would have lost both parents. And he'd given them Victoria's number. Because even after everything, even after the fight and the silence and the fear, she was still the person he wanted. Now he lay on a gurney in the ER, head throbbing, chest aching, waiting for test results. He'd called Miguel to get Leo from the neighbors and take him for the night. He'd told the nurses he was fine, that nobody was coming. But when he closed his eyes, all he saw was Victoria's face. The way she'd looked when he'd said those cruel things, the tears streaming down her cheeks. "I should have fought for us," he thought. "I should have been brave enough to stay." "Mr. Ross?" A nurse poked her head in. "Your visitor is here. I don't have a—" But Victoria was already pushing past the nurse, her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged, her eyes wild with fear. "Daniel." She crossed to his bedside in 3 quick strides. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's not—" She grabbed his hand, the one without an IV, and held it like a lifeline. "They said there was an accident, that you were hurt. I thought—" Her voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you." Daniel stared at her. "You came?" "Of course I came, Daniel. I've been trying to work up the courage to come to you for 5 days. And then I got the call, and tears streamed down her face. I'm so sorry. For everything. For not fighting when you tried to leave. For not making you understand that you've never been a project to me. Victoria, please let me finish. I need to say this." She took a shaky breath. "You were right. About some of it. I did see you that night at the restaurant and think I could help, but you were wrong about why. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. I saw someone who was surviving instead of living, just like me. I saw someone who'd lost pieces of themselves and was trying to hold it together for their kid. I saw someone who understood what it meant to keep going even when you wanted to give up. I said terrible things to you," Daniel whispered. "You said scared things. Because that article hit every wound Melissa left, and you were trying to protect yourself. I understand that. I should have understood it sooner." Victoria squeezed his hand. "But Daniel, I need you to know you're not a charity case. You're not someone who needs saving. You're a brilliant architect, with ideas that could change how people live. You're an amazing father who loves his son with his whole heart. And you're—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "What?" Daniel prompted. "You're the first person in 3 years who's made me want to live instead of just survive. Who's made me laugh, who's made me believe I could deserve something good again." She met his eyes. "I love you, Daniel. I'm in love with you. And I should have said that 5 days ago, instead of letting you walk away." Daniel's breath caught. "You love me?" "Yes, completely. Terrifyingly." She laughed through her tears. "And I know I messed up. I know the partnership structure wasn't equal. I know I moved too fast and didn't consider how it would look. But I promise, if you give me another chance, I'll do better. We'll rewrite every contract, we'll make it truly equal. Or, we'll scrap the whole thing, if that's what you need. I don't care about the business. I care about you." Daniel pushed himself up slightly, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "Victoria, I love you too." She froze. "You do?" "Yes. I've loved you since the rainstorm, maybe even before. But I was too scared to believe it could be real, too scared to believe I could deserve you." "We deserve each other," Victoria said fiercely. "Broken pieces and all, we deserve to be happy. I'm sorry for what I said. About you using me. About—" "Stop." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "We both said things we regret. What matters is what we say now. What we choose now." Daniel caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "I choose you. I choose us. I choose being brave enough to accept love, even when it's terrifying." Victoria leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull back if his injuries hurt too much. He didn't pull back. Their lips met soft, tentative, full of apology and promise and hope. When they broke apart, both were crying. "So we're doing this?" Daniel asked. Really doing this? Yes. But differently this time. As partners. Real partners. Equal in every way that matters. Deal, he smiled. Though I have to warn you, I come with a 7-year-old who's going to be very excited about this. Good. I come with an 8-year-old who's been lecturing me about being brave. They laughed, and it felt like breathing after being underwater. I'm going to redesign the partnership agreement, Victoria said. 50-50 ownership, equal decision-making. Your name first on everything, Ross and Chen, not Chen and Ross. Victoria. I mean it. This is your company, your vision. I'm just the money and the business expertise. You're the heart. Daniel pulled her closer, kissed her forehead. We're both the heart. That's the whole point. A nurse came in, raising an eyebrow at their joined hands, but saying nothing. Mr. Ross, your CT scan is clear. You can go home, but you need to rest for at least 3 days. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. He won't, Victoria said immediately. I'll make sure of it. The nurse smiled. Good luck with that. Men are terrible patients. After she left, Daniel looked at Victoria. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You're staying with me. You and Leo both. My place has plenty of room, and someone needs to make sure you actually rest. Victoria, don't argue. I've already made up my mind. She softened. Please? I need to take care of you. Let me do this. Daniel saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the need to prove she could be there for him, not as a billionaire, but as a partner. Okay, he said. But fair warning, Leo has very specific breakfast requirements. Good thing I have a chef. They smiled at each other, and something settled into place. Something that felt a lot like home. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the lobby of what would soon be the first completed Ross and Chen design project. A community housing complex in the Mission District designed specifically for single-parent families. The building was beautiful not in a flashy way, but in a way that understood how people actually lived. Every apartment had sight lines, from the kitchen to the play areas. The windows were positioned to maximize natural light without sacrificing privacy. There was a communal garden on the roof, where kids could play while parents worked from the shared co-working space below. It was Daniel's vision brought to life. And it was nearly finished. Mom, look! Emma called from across the lobby, where she and Leo were examining the architectural model. Leo says there's going to be a library just for kids. With beanbags, Leo added enthusiastically. Dad designed it. Victoria smiled, watching them. In the 6 months since the hospital, Emma and Leo had become inseparable. They had sleepovers every weekend, alternating between Victoria's penthouse, which now had toy bins and art supplies, and felt significantly less empty, and the 3-bedroom apartment Daniel had moved into, with help from the company. Not charity, a salary advance that he'd insisted on paying back with interest. They'd rebuilt their partnership from the ground up, 50-50 ownership, every decision made together. And it had been hard sometimes. They were both strong-willed, both used to being in control. But they'd learned to communicate, to compromise, to trust each other. And somewhere along the way, the partnership had become something more. Penny, for your thoughts. Daniel's voice came from behind her. She felt his arms wrap around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. Just thinking about how far we've come. From awkward restaurant encounters to this. He gestured at the building. Not bad for 6 months. Not bad at all. Daniel turned her around to face him. He looked different than he had that first night. More rested, less haunted. Success looked good on him. But it was the happiness that really transformed him. The way he smiled now, open and unguarded. I have something to ask you, he said, suddenly nervous. Oh? Victoria raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Maybe. Depends on your answer. He took her hands. Victoria Chen, I love you. I love how fierce you are in negotiations. I love how you've learned to play dinosaurs with the kids. I love that you donated half your wealth to affordable housing initiatives, because money should build homes, not portfolios. I love that you cry during animated movies and pretend you don't. Victoria laughed, her eyes already starting to sting. Daniel, I love that you've taught Emma to code and me to believe I'm worthy of good things. I love that we argue about architectural theory and software design and whether hot dogs are sandwiches. He paused, squeezed her hands. And I love that you've made me brave enough to ask you this. He started to kneel, and Victoria's breath caught. "Don't you dare propose to me in a construction zone," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Why not? This is where we built our future together. Seems appropriate." He pulled out a small box. Not from Tiffany's, she noticed. Something simpler. More personal. "Victoria, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in every sense of the word, in business, in life, in raising these two amazing kids who've already picked out their outfits for the wedding? You told them before me?" Victoria tried to sound indignant, but she was grinning too hard. They guessed. Kids are perceptive. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single, perfect diamond. "So? Will you?" Victoria looked at the ring, then at Daniel, then at Emma and Leo, who were watching from across the lobby with barely contained excitement. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, frozen, isolated, going through the motions of life without really living it. She thought about the man Daniel had been, broken, ashamed, convinced he wasn't worthy of love or success. And she thought about who they'd become together, partners, lovers, co-parents to 2 kids who deserved to see what healthy love looked like. "Yes," Victoria said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, I'll marry you. On one condition." Daniel's face lit up. "Name it." "We get married here, in this building, when it's finished. Because you're right, this is where we built our future. Where better to start our marriage?" Daniel stood, slipped the ring on her finger, and kissed her deep and thorough and full of promise. Emma and Leo erupted in cheers, running over to hug them both. "Finally," Emma said. "We've been waiting forever." "It's been 6 months," Victoria laughed. "That's forever when you're 8, Emma said seriously. "Can I be the ring bearer?" Leo asked. "Please?" "Absolutely," Daniel said. "But only if Emma agrees to be the maid of honor." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really," Victoria confirmed. "I can't think of anyone I'd rather have by my side." The 4 of them stood there in the unfinished lobby, surrounded by sawdust and potential, holding each other and laughing. This was what happiness looked like, Victoria realized. Not perfection, not wealth or status or proving you had it all together. Just this. People who loved you, work that mattered, and the courage to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. The wedding took place 3 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in October. The housing complex was finished by then, fully occupied by families who cried with gratitude when they got their acceptance letters. The communal spaces buzzed with life. Children played in the rooftop garden, parents gathered in the co-working space, supporting each other. It was everything Daniel had dreamed of building. And now, it was also where he was getting married. They'd transformed the main lobby into a ceremony space, simple, elegant, filled with flowers and light. Chairs were set up for about 50 people, close friends, family, some of the residents from the building who'd become like extended family. Daniel stood at the altar, the designated ceremony spot, in a suit that actually fit him. Leo beside him in a tiny matching suit, the rings secured in his pocket. Miguel stood as best man, grinning. "You clean up nice, man." "I'm terrified," Daniel admitted. "Good. That means it matters." The music started, not a traditional wedding march, but something softer, more personal. Emma appeared first, walking down the aisle in a simple lavender dress, carefully carrying a bouquet that was almost as big as she was. She took her place opposite Leo, giving him a thumbs up. And then Victoria appeared. Daniel's breath stopped. She wore a dress the color of champagne, simple, elegant, nothing like the elaborate gowns billionaires usually wore. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, no makeup except a touch of lipstick. No jewelry except the engagement ring and the jade bracelet David had given her years ago. She looked radiant, but more than that, she looked happy, free, alive. She walked down the aisle alone, no one to give her away, because she belonged to herself. When she reached Daniel, she took his hands, and he saw tears in her eyes. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back. The officiant began the ceremony, but Daniel barely heard it. He was too focused on Victoria's face, on the way she looked at him like he'd hung the moon. "How did I get this lucky?" he wondered. "How did we find each other?" But he knew the answer. They'd both been brave enough to try, to risk, to choose love, even when it was terrifying. "Daniel," the officiant said, pulling him back to the moment, Your vows? He took a breath. Victoria, 6 months ago, you walked up to my table in a restaurant and did something unbelievable. You saw me. Not my circumstances, not my failures, not what I could or couldn't provide, just me. And you made me believe I was worth seeing. His voice wavered, but he continued. You taught me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That partnership means lifting each other up, not keeping score. That love isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, even when you're scared. He squeezed her hands. I promise to show up for you every day, to fight for us when things get hard, to celebrate your victories like they're mine, because they are. To be the kind of partner you deserve, not because I'm trying to earn you, but because loving you makes me want to be better. Victoria was crying openly now. That was beautiful. Your turn, Daniel said, smiling through his own tears. Victoria took a shaky breath. Daniel, my husband made me promise before he died that I would live, not just survive. For 3 years, I broke that promise. I built walls so high, I forgot what it felt like to connect with anyone. And then I saw you with Leo, and something inside me woke up. She brushed away tears. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. That wealth means nothing without people to share it with. That being present is the greatest gift we can give the people we love. Her voice strengthened. I promise to be present for you every single day. To trust you as an equal partner in everything we build together. To love Leo like he's my own, because he is. To never stop fighting for us, even when fear tells me it's easier to retreat. She smiled. And I promise that when you're being stubborn, I'll call you on it. And when I'm being controlling, you have permission to remind me that we're a team. Deal, Daniel said, laughing. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Daniel didn't wait for the finish. He pulled Victoria close and kissed her, and the small crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Emma and Leo jumped up and down, chanting, They did it! They did it! When they finally broke apart, Daniel rested his forehead against Victoria's. Mrs. Ross Chen, he said. Or is it Chen Ross? Just Victoria and Daniel, she said. Partners in everything. Partners in everything, he echoed. The reception was held in the rooftop garden, strung with lights, as the sun set over San Francisco. There was dancing and food and laughter. The residents of the building mingled with tech executives and construction workers' worlds colliding in the best possible way. At one point, Victoria found herself alone at the railing, looking out at the city. Margaret appeared beside her. Happy? Deliriously. David would be proud of you. For keeping your promise. For living. Victoria smiled, touching the jade bracelet. I like to think he had a hand in this somehow. Sent Daniel and Leo to that restaurant, on purpose. Maybe he did. Or maybe you were just brave enough to say yes when the universe offered you a second chance. Maybe both. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, Thank you. For pushing me. For not letting me hide in my office and pretend I was fine. That's what friends do. Daniel appeared, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Sorry to interrupt, but I believe I owe my wife a dance. Your wife, Victoria repeated, grinning. I like the sound of that. So do I. They moved to the makeshift dance floor, where other couples swayed to the music. Daniel pulled Victoria close, and they moved together easily, naturally. Thank you, Victoria whispered. For what? For being stubborn enough to accept my help. For teaching me what partnership really means. For loving Emma like she's yours. She is mine, just like Leo's yours. We're a family now, weird and blended and perfect. Perfect, Victoria agreed. She looked over Daniel's shoulder and saw Emma and Leo dancing nearby. Well, jumping around more than dancing, but they were happy, so happy. And then she saw them, the residents of the building. Families who had homes now because Daniel had designed spaces that understood their needs, because she'd had the resources to make it happen, because together, they'd built something that mattered. We're going to do more of this, Victoria said suddenly. More weddings? Daniel teased. More buildings, more communities. More homes that understand how people actually live. She pulled back to look at him. Ross and Chen Design is going to change how this country thinks about housing, about family, about what home means. That's ambitious. I married an ambitious man. He's rubbing off on me. Daniel grinned. You married a man who used to count pennies for his kid's birthday dinner. Look how far we've come. Look how far we're going to go." They kissed again, and around them, the party continued. Music and laughter and joy filling the space Daniel had designed and Victoria had funded, and together they'd brought to life. Later that night, after the reception ended and the guests left, after Emma and Leo were tucked into bed in their penthouse, Victoria and Daniel stood on the balcony where they'd shared their first kiss. "I can't believe this is my life now," Daniel said. "Married to you, living here, running a successful firm. Believe it, you earned it. We earned it, together." Victoria leaned against him, his arms wrapping around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" "The article. The one that almost destroyed us." Victoria stiffened. "Daniel? No. Hear me out. I'm thinking about how that article forced us to confront our deepest fears. Forced me to face my shame, you to face your guilt. And how we could have let it break us." He turned her around to face him, but instead, "We chose each other. We chose to fight. And now we're here." "Here," Victoria echoed. "Married, happy, building something that matters." Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. If that article hadn't happened, I might have kept hiding behind my pride. You might have kept hiding behind your work. We might have stayed in that comfortable, safe space that wasn't really comfortable or safe at all. Victoria thought about that, about how catastrophe had forced growth, how pain had led to healing. "I wouldn't change any of it," she said. "Not the article, not the fight, not any of it. Because it brought us here. To this moment. To this life." They stood there, holding each other, looking out at the city that had witnessed their journey. From that restaurant encounter, to the rainstorm, to the hospital, to this balcony, to a wedding in a building that would house families who needed it. "I love you, Daniel Ross Chen," Victoria said. "I love you, Victoria Chen Ross," he replied. And somewhere in the penthouse behind them, Emma and Leo slept peacefully, two kids who'd been lonely once, but weren't anymore. Because their parents had been brave enough to do the unbelievable. They'd chosen love. 1 year later, Ross and Chen Design won the National Architecture Award for their work on affordable family housing. Daniel gave the acceptance speech, with Victoria standing beside him, and dedicated it to everyone who's been told they're not enough. You are. You always were. They went on to design 15 more housing complexes across the country. Emma and Leo grew up together, eventually becoming architects themselves, carrying on the family business. And Victoria and Daniel, they kept choosing each other every single day, through arguments and laughter, through challenges and triumphs, through the beautiful, messy reality of building a life together. Because love, real love, isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up, being vulnerable, choosing partnership over pride. It's about a billionaire who saw a single dad and did something unbelievable. She let herself be seen in return, and together, they built something more valuable than any fortune. They built a home. We all have moments when we can choose fear or choose love, when we can protect ourselves or take a risk on connection. What choice are you facing right now? And what would it look like to be brave enough to choose love, not just romantic love, but connection, vulnerability, reaching out instead of pulling back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes saying it out loud is the first step toward change.